We're now with the Election Commission, and Councilman Stein is with us. If you could introduce yourself, your colleagues, and then make whatever budget presentation you'd like to make, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. My name is Ron Buchanan. I'm chairman of the Davis County Election Commission. To my left is Kent Wall, who's our administrator of elections. To his left is Joan Nixon, who's deputy administrator of elections. We also have the other 4 members of the Election Commission that are attending today. Starting from left to right is Tricia Hertzfeld, Jennifer Lawson, A.J. Starling, and Jim Delantis. And they all wanted to be here and appear today. I was nominated for this position last March, and I was given a copy of the state report, which I'm sure you've heard about. And I was advised that there were problems in the department when I accepted the job. Since that time, that report was very critical of the 2012 election. And to boil it down, there was not enough poll workers, and they were poorly trained. When the new commission first met, we reviewed the report, and the commission accepted responsibility for that, even though we weren't there, and agreed with the state that the workers were poorly trained and we didn't have enough of them. So we communicated that back to the state. The first thing we did was vote to terminate the administrator because we did not feel like his leadership was adequate. We then set upon trying to find a new administrator, had over 100 applications, and we were very pleased to coax Mr. Kent Wall out of retirement to be the administrator. He's a former president of Johnson & Murphy Shoes and Docker Shoes, and has run a consulting company where his job was to go into companies and determine what was wrong and what they could do to fix it. We now have him full-time on our staff to serve those same functions. He's been on the job about 6 months, and he's identified the problems, he's quantified the problems, and he has a plan to solve those problems. But the plan needs resources to do so. In 2008, the budget for the Election Commission was $4.6 million, and we had 32 full-time employees. The 2013-14 budget, as approved by the Metro Council, was for $2.8 million and 18 full-time staff members. We have about half the budget and half the staff to fulfill these responsibilities. What has happened to the department is a normal decline in performance by being underfunded. And we have voted as a commission unanimously to seek more money, to hire more staff, to train the workers, and to recruit the workers. The staff we have now is barely adequate to perform the day-to-day functions of the Election Commission. We do not have adequate staff to put on an election. And if the staffing continues at the current level, we're going to continue to see poor elections. We're going to continue to show a shortage of poll workers. We're going to continue to have workers inadequately trained, and we will continue to have poor elections with long lines. That would be a failure of the commission to carry out its job responsibility as mandated by the state of Tennessee. We're here asking for a significant raise in the budget so we can perform the job we're mandated to do. If there continues as it is, it's going to be the responsibility of the mayor and the council for not providing us with adequate funds, not our responsibility. Now, with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wall.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Highnote, Mr. Riedling, appreciate the opportunity to be here to describe for you the process that I have been about and how I'm proposing that we continue that into the new fiscal year. My government experience, frankly, was limited to the 10 years I was in the U.S. Army. After that, I've been in the private sector, 25 years in the corporate world and 18 years running my own international consulting company. And as the chairman described, the situations that I've found in both the corporate side and the consulting side created my methodology, if you will, of a way to look at an operation and try to figure out where some of the opportunities might be and how that organization was configured to be able to accomplish whatever purpose they were about. And I use that same process in accepting this position at the Election Commission. My first day was the 4th of November. 2 days away from starting my 6th month. And the process that I undertook in November was pretty much concluded in December. And I went to the chairman and I said, these are some of my findings. I looked at the Metro audit report from 12, I looked at the state report from 12, and I also looked at the budget and how it would be juxtaposed against the mission, which was to put on the election cycle in 14, and could we in fact address the problems, the critical problems that the state had pointed out. It was interesting to me in preparing for this session that I went back and looked at the prior presentations for the last 2 years, and in both of those, the same problems were identified, training and recruiting, yet nothing had been done. One of my findings was that we had a cadre, I was told, of 2,000 poll workers that we could rely upon. So I determined we were going to reach out to these people. They hadn't been contacted since the last election to find out just how solid this group was, and I was shocked to find out we could only count on 49% of that 2,000. It takes about, to hit the state required manning level, we need just short of 1,600 poll workers on election day. So we can see we were far short of that number. There was no recruiting capability in the Election Commission. In fact, in all of 13, we were able to get poll worker applications from 35 people. So clearly 13 was not a good recruiting year and certainly wouldn't do anything to close the gap. So Mr. Chairman and I went down to see Mr. Riebling and said, we need some relief here. We need some latitude as to how to deploy the assets we have, and explained what we were about and where we were going to use those assets. He was kind enough to agree. He also said that if we run into obstacles in moving through the Metro system, because we were on a very short window getting ready for May, he said, we will be here to help you. And they were. They have been super cooperative all the way through. They've cleared away some obstacles for us to move quickly. And so we knew we were short on the poll worker side, and we're moving to address it. We were also short on the training side. In fact, the training materials were the same ones that had been used in 12. Nothing had been updated, and this was in February. So we gathered up some of the other counties and looked at best practices from what they were doing, and Joan Nixon undertook a project that began in February, which was to modernize our training approach. We also, in February, finally got the EPBs, the electronic poll books, moved out of limbo, and the state recertified Davidson County to use this equipment for the May primary. The commissioners voted to do that, and we would do it countywide. So that then would change the duties and the configuration of what actually went on inside of a polling location. So we've had changes there as well. We reached out to our poll officers. That's our core leadership group. And I sat with two different groups of these folks who are in a situation very similar to this, and we talked through some of the issues. And they were very forthcoming and very candid with me, and they had some very valid concerns. And those concerns were, number one, they had workers that showed up on Election Day in 12 that were not trained. They had workers that went to training but had no idea what they were supposed to do on Election Day, and they were all shorthanded. We fielded for the November election just short of 1,200 poll workers. That should have been the first signal to somebody that this reservoir of poll workers was way, way eroded. Apparently it was not. And my finding in December said, yes, it has been, and it had been replenished. And so these officers were very instrumental in buying into what we were about. And we were fortunate. We were able to get a crackerjack recruiter on board. She started in January, and we have really made significant progress. For example, we have received since the middle of January nearly 300 new applications for poll workers. Significant increase. And this is because that individual, the recruiter, appeared since January 15th. She's been in front of 24 organizations where she actually spoke. She's in 50-plus messaging opportunities where we were on websites and publications, including church bulletins and so on. And there were 9 media events. You might remember that on March the 16th, one of Gail Kerr's last columns, she wrote about being a poll worker. This is all part of the outreach to the community to say, hey, we need workers. We actually reached out with a communication to all the council members. It's asking them to send out information. So it's been a multi-front effort to get our ranks replenished, and it's paying off. We have another measure that I track, and that's what's going on the website. In the month of January, we had actually 308 hits on the link on our website. If you want poll worker information, go to this location. In the month of February, that number had jumped to 446, and we had nearly 200 people downloaded the documents to apply. In the month of March, full month of March, we were near a little over 750 for the month, and we had over 140 applications. Metro IT was very helpful to us in getting our website modernized to the extent that we can now do what anybody applying for a job in Metro can do. They can do it online. That wasn't available prior to last Thursday. So we've made a lot of progress to enable us to get this effort further along, and it's paying off. The training issue boiled down to we had 2 large classes, not enough hands-on experience in getting ready, and we've changed all of that. Classes are much smaller. Everything that has a piece of equipment to operate, they're all hands-on. Nobody will miss the opportunity to do that. We actually have labs set up where they can come back on their own time and play with this equipment and get comfortable with it. We also have mock polling locations set up at our offices where a poll officer can bring his team in and walk through. So he doesn't show up on Election Day not being confident that his team knows what they're supposed to do. So I feel that we're moving in the right direction. And as I mentioned, Joan Nixon undertook the effort to modernize our training materials. And that has been very, very well received, I can tell you. And we've had 5 officer classes already, and they really like this approach. They really like the simplicity of it. We've gotten rid of a lot of the superfluous material that had gotten into it. And I won't say we created it because we didn't. We just adopted best practices from some of the other counties who had already leapt beyond where we were. So I think as we move into May, we're still not out of the woods. We've still got a long gap to close for poll workers. We will reassess our training approach after the election to see where we might have some deficiencies. So the point I would like to make in this early first period of time that I've been there is, we identified the same problems that the prior 2 presentations to you did as well. It's just we've done something about it. We have the elements in place to do that. This FY15 budget that we're proposing will allow us to continue because on June 30th, our effort doesn't cease. We've still got more workers to recruit and people to train for August and November. Without these resources, we won't be able to do that. And I'm afraid we will lose the momentum that we've already been able to build up and the enthusiasm that goes with that. So our budget is a considerable increase over what was, but as the chairman said, it's back to nearly a little bit larger than the level of 08 in terms of funding. In terms of people, it gets us back to the Manning level of 08, which is 32 core staff. That does not count the commissioners. That's just our in-house staff. This will allow us to continue the rebuilding effort that we have underway. Specifically in this budget, we have $2.2 million to fund the elections. There are 2 large elections, August and November. We have budgeted these to be fully manned to the state level in every precinct and not just try to do it with the least amount of people we can get by with. Otherwise, we will run afoul of the state. They're going to be looking for this and how well we do this. What we're proposing for each election is, if you have this document, is for early voting, one site for 14 days and 11 sites for 6 days. That's a considerable increase over what has been. And the reason for that is that the ballot in August is going to be quite long, and it'll behoove all of us if we can get more people to vote early, because the lines will be long on Election Day, just the process of actually reading through the ballot and making the selections. I can tell you that having attended with Mr. Stein the Budget and Finance Committee meeting on Monday, early voting sites is still a very hot topic with the council members. I guess it's never enough, but I think we need to do more than what we've been doing to head off this problem. It's just going to recur. Even if it's underfunded, it's going to come up again, and I guess we'll have to go through the council process of extra funding. We propose to do it on the front end. We're also planning for a runoff election in September. In Council District number 11, there are a number of candidates there, and so we think there'll be a runoff for that. November, which is the state general election, we're also having more early voting sites, and we're doing it for a longer period of time and fully man all the locations. So we also will have the City of Oak Hill election in June of 15, and we will be in preparation for the Metro election in August. That'll start in May and June of next calendar year. That is the sum of the elections part of this budget. In addition, we're proposing staff additions. We have 2 recruiters on staff now. We need to make those permanent positions. They're part-time positions right now, and they need to be made permanent, and then we need to carry that effort of what they've accomplished so far. We need to carry it forward into the new FY. We also are paying attention to what's going at our satellite office downtown. The traffic there is building. It has been over the last several months. I got a weekly report on traffic. Voter registrations are going up as we approach the election, so we need to monitor that. We have staff from our MSE office, Metro Southeast, down there now. We need to get staff there on a permanent basis. One of the council members asked the question, why can we not perform the same functions at the satellite as we do at Metro Southeast? We have candidates running back and forth all the way out there, and they could do it so much easier downtown. If we had the staff, we could probably begin to do some of that. We just don't have it right now. We also are in need of a information systems tech. Even though we've made progress, it's very, very limited at this point in getting into the 21st century in terms of the technology that we could use to recruit and get our messages out. In fact, Joan Nixon and I had a visit in February from Congressman Cooper's chief of staff, Liz Quigley, who brought with her a document proposing a way to use technology to get our recruiting effort up. There are a number of things that were there we were already moving on. A larger number we don't have the budget or the staff to be able to undertake. And then there's a group that maybe is out there on the horizon for the next guy that replaces me. But clearly they see the problem, and we do too. We just need to get the funding. But I want to compliment Metro IT and the way they move to get us into a position where we can actually apply online now and not have to ask somebody who wants to apply to download something. That assumes they have a printer, or they can call a phone number, which goes into a queue of voicemail messages. This is a much quicker way to do it, and those first 18 in 2 days are telling me that that's working. People like that, especially as we try to recruit younger poll workers. They're much more tech savvy than our veteran group has been, and we need to show them that we can adopt technology to do the best job in recruiting. We also are proposing here an increase in the pay that we give to all of our poll officials at each position in the polling location, and to raise the daily training rate that we provide. Right now it's $15 for any training session. And if you live in Bellevue and you drive to Metro Southeast, that might pay for about half your gas bill. It certainly doesn't pay you for your time. And we're behind the times when you look at the other counties around the state in terms of training rate. I'm talking about Shelby County and Knox County. We're also proposing, since the duties are changing in the polling location, the responsibilities are greater, that those people be compensated for that. And I've heard it said many times since I've been in this job that a poll worker doesn't do it for the money. Well, that's plain and simple, because there's not a lot of money. But when you bump it up against the responsibilities, I think it's way out of balance. And I think the younger generation is less receptive to that civic duty message than our veterans have been in the past. So we want to bring it more, the pay rate more in line with what we're asking folks to do. We also know the value of year-round training. Even when we go into what's called an off year, we can't lose contact with our poll officials. We need to bring them up to speed as we change things, so it doesn't all happen just before the election. Make them feel a part of what's going on, not abandon them for a 12-month period, and get them back into the fold. We also have considerable amount of software and licensing agreements, which we are required by contract to pay, and that amounts to nearly $100,000, which was not funded in this year's budget, but we had to find the money to be able to pay it because those contracts did not go away. We also have voter registration requirements that are federally and state mandated that we have to follow, and that costs, the budget there is $47,000 in the new budget. We also have found out the need for part-time clerical help. We found out this as we started to get ready for the May primary. Our staff just is not capable of jumping up to these peaks when the demand is there, and so that is also an item that we have funded at $31,000. When you take the total of that request and you adjust it, the net increase is $2.5 million in the new budget. As I said, this is designed to keep us moving forward, to continue to address the problems that we discovered back in the early part of my tenure, and not lose the momentum that we have that we've already established. So I'm ready for your questions if you have any, please.
What, in terms of permanent staffing, how does the Davidson County Election Commission compare to the other three major cities?
Mr. Mayor, I can't answer that specifically. I can tell you that I've been told that Shelby County operates with a smaller staff than Davidson. In fact, their staff is smaller than it was several years ago. But I can get you that information. I don't know it.
Okay. And then obviously, one of the idiosyncrasies of the Election Commission is that you have election years where there's obviously more in some years than others that you're asked to do. And as you increase staffing, what assurances can be given the taxpayers that those workers are being fully utilized even during years when there's relatively little?
That's a fair question, and I would say that given where we are now and the task ahead of us, I can see a very busy time as we move into the off year. In fact, it's not really an off year. There's an election in August. We'll be staffing up for that. But we have housekeeping work that goes on daily, voter registration. We get about 400 registrations through the DMV every month. We get another couple of hundred that are sent in by mail, and that's an ongoing process every day. That staff is actually understaffed, and we're asking for additions there to help the workload. What we've been doing in both voter registration and in absentee is we bring in part-time people. We pay them $10 an hour. Well, they don't last very long. If they find something else, they'll move on. So we're in a constant turnover mode. We need to make those permanent. I see that this request that we're asking for is going. These folks are going to be busy. We don't want to stop in an off year. We want to get better in the off year and improve what we're doing. So I think that the workload is going to be there.
The off year, I might add, is an excellent time to recruit also. And that's one of the things we would do in the off year has not been done. The staff we have now, the level is just sufficient to take care of the day-to-day activities, not to recruit and train. We need to rewrite the training material. We did that in a few months just on an emergency basis because what we had was inadequate. We need to spend a lot more time doing that. So we get the staff, we can keep them busy.
Greg?
I just got a couple of questions. I want to make sure I understand exactly. So of the $3.2 million additional request above and beyond last year's budget, 2.2-ish is for elections, right?
Yes.
Election related for this fiscal year.
That is the breakdown of the FY15 budget.
Got it. And so the staff improvements come to somewhere around 670, and I want to make sure I understand exactly what they consist of. 2 recruiters that are now part-time that you would make full-time?
These are, yes, sir. These are recruiters, the one of which joined us in January, who was actually a poll official and was helping us do something, and she has a background, just one of those strokes of luck. She did the same kind of thing for years with Bell South and AT&T, and she's good. But she came out of retirement to do this.
So she's working part-time now?
She is working part-time now, but at the end of May, she's going to say goodbye to us. I cannot convince her to stay. She said, it ate up my life at Bell South, and I don't want to do so here. But I'll tell you what, she is a house of fire. She's very effective.
Okay.
And we also have another recruiter whose primary job is messaging, so that we can raise up. In fact, we started a newsletter, and it's running about every month right now, to reach out to the poll workers to do that. All of our level, the entire level of communications to the outside needs to be raised up. And she can do that. And she can also provide consistency in our messaging. We don't have anybody on staff that can write an ad. That's what she does. We don't need to lose that capability.
And then so the staff from Metro Southeast is now currently staffed in the downtown location.
Yes, it is.
And how many people are there?
There are 2 there now.
And so they would go back to Metro Southeast, and you would add 3 new people? Or?
One of them would go back. Those are some of the positions that Mr. Riebling allowed us to move funds away from those slots to focus on recruiting.
Using that money for the training.
Right. Okay.
And but we can't neglect that. We've got to go back and make sure that doesn't. We have somebody who's there whose real job is out at MSE. She just has to be particularly good at it. But that's not the way to go forward.
And then there's an additional full-time position for IT work?
That's right.
And you see that person sort of spending most of their time doing what? Help me.
Working with a website.
Okay.
We also have a need for getting ourselves more fully into the 21st century with Facebook and Twitter and those kinds of things that the younger generation is using. And how do we incorporate that into the recruiting effort and our messaging effort? How do we get that around? And that's not my generation, I have to tell you, but I'm a believer now, and clearly Liz Quigley saw it, and her staff saw it, and they're the ones that are encouraging us to move in this direction.
And then 2 positions full-time, I think, for absentee early voting staff.
Yes, sir.
And it says on my sheet, restored from FY14 budget request. So just help me understand what those people do every day.
Well,
are those functions that currently exist that we need to add staff to, or?
These are functions that are needs that we have that are being done by part-time people.
Okay.
And we need to make those permanent. Those positions were in the budget request for the year we're operating, but they were not approved, all 4 of those. And so we've played shorthanded this year.
What do those folks do? Like when it's early vote, absentee, what do they do? They process absentee vote? What do they do?
Well, in an election year, they're responsible for sending out all the absentee ballots.
Right. Big job.
They're also responsible for monitoring the felon voter program.
Right.
Nursing home voting.
Okay.
What have I left out, Joe?
Prison voting.
Prison voting. I mean, there's a myriad of things that we've just lumped into this area. And we've got a couple of part-time people that come in peaks like now. Otherwise, we'd be swamped.
And then 2 positions full-time again, I'm assuming, for voter registration?
Yes.
And those people will work at where? Where will they work from?
They'll be out at MSE in the voter registration department. They're the ones that process the voter registration cards that come in from DMV and the ones that come in through the mail, or those that are turned in at our satellite office.
Yeah, so will there be somebody who does voter registration at
They do that
Fulton
now.
campus?
They do that now.
But there's under this proposal, there's new people going there. I want to make sure that function still exists.
That function would be in 2 locations.
Okay.
But the central part of it is out at MSE.
Okay. And then the other part of the proposal is to raise the pay for poll workers or
Yes.
poll workers or officials.
Right.
Have you had a chance to look at sort of how our pay for poll workers compares to other places? Are we comparable? Are we low? Are we high?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
We looked at several comparable counties, and it's very difficult, honestly, to get a apples-to-apples comparison because of the way they
Sure.
pay and what they pay.
It's always that way in government. You're a private sector guy. It's always that way.
I'm finding that out. But I would summarize it this way. We're the highest in the state. Right.
Currently? Before this increase?
Yes, we're the
Okay.
highest in the state. But that's not my standard. That's not the one I would use. I want to be the best. We need to get the best workers. And I have recruited. I've been out recruiting myself, and I can tell you that when you walk up to somebody and ask them about being a poll official, what they say is, well, what do you want me to do? And then the next question is, what do you pay? And 9 times out of 10, they walk away. You're asking me to do what and get paid this? We can't get over that first hurdle. And we're still not going to be really competitive to the civilian world. I think we just need to get it more in line with the duties and responsibilities. I mean, a poll officer's responsibilities are really something when you really get down to it. He's responsible for that precinct. And that's a lot. He's got the voting machines to worry about. He's got the electronic poll books to worry about. Got the voter flow coming in. He's got to be checking the 100-foot boundary. He's got to handle visiting people that come in. He needs relief, and therefore we've created a position called the deputy, who is going to be handling all the, what I call the problem voter issues that arise. They don't get boxed up or bollocksed up at the entrance. The good-to-go voters are handled there. The problem voters go over to this deputy, where all of that can be handled. That's a lot of responsibility. We're just trying to make it more equitable.
Okay. I'm good.
Rich?
I don't have any questions.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for a very thorough and report, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.